The human was the only one in the grand spire with his feet on the floor, and 1,000 winged faces looked down at him like he was already dead. Daniel Reed stood in the center of the great hall, wearing borrowed clothes that did not fit him right. Above him, the Alderans hovered in perfect formation. Their wings caught the light from the crystal ceiling, throwing rainbows across the walls. They were beautiful, they were terrifying, and they were all staring at him. The Alderans were tall and graceful, with feathers that grew from their arms and formed wings wide enough to carry them through the sky. Their entire world was built for flight. The throne room had no stairs, only platforms at different heights. The galleries had no railings because no one was supposed to fall. Everything important happened in the air, and Daniel was stuck on the ground like a bug. King Aldros descended from his floating throne. His wings were gold and silver, marking him as royalty. He landed softly in front of Daniel, and the hall went silent. "Human," the king said, "3 months ago, the plague of shadows was killing my people. Their wings were rotting. They were falling from the sky. My healers had no answers. My priests had no prayers that worked." Daniel said nothing. He remembered it well. The sick filling the hospitals, the bodies in the streets, the fear. "You came to us with strange ideas," the king continued. "You spoke of tiny creatures too small to see. You taught us to wash our hands, to cover our faces, to separate the sick from the healthy. Simple things. Foolish things, my advisors said." High Counselor Vurek, hovering behind the king, made a small sound of displeasure. "But your foolish things worked," King Aldros said. "The plague has ended. Millions of my people live because of you. And so I will give you anything in my power." The king spread his arms wide. "Gold enough to fill a ship. Lands that stretch beyond sight. A title of nobility. A seat on my high council. Ships. Servants. Anything." Daniel looked around the hall. He saw the gold pillars, the floating gardens, the wealth beyond imagination. Any human would kill for this chance. He could return to Earth as the richest man alive. He could buy planets. He could live like a god. But something else had caught his attention. "Your Majesty," Daniel said, "on my way here, I passed a silver door." The hovering crowd shifted. Whispers spread like wind through leaves. "There was someone behind it," Daniel continued. "I saw an eye watching me through the crack. Just for a moment." King Aldros went very still. "That door leads to the Wing of Sorrows," the king said carefully. "It is not a place for visitors." "Who lives there?" The silence stretched. High Counselor Varek flew forward, his wings beating hard. "This is not your concern, human. Take your gold and your ships and leave our world with our thanks. Do not ask questions about matters that do not involve you." But Daniel had spent his whole life asking questions about matters that did not involve him. That was what rescue workers did. They went where they were not invited. They helped people who had not asked. "Your Majesty," Daniel said again, "I would like to meet whoever is behind that door." The king's face changed. Shock first, then anger, then something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Or maybe fear. "You do not know what you ask," the king said quietly. "Behind that door is my daughter, Princess Lida. She was born with wings that never grew properly. She cannot fly. She will never fly." Daniel waited. "In our world," the king continued, "those who cannot fly are considered cursed, touched by darkness. My daughter has not left that wing in 20 years. I hid her there to protect her from the shame, from the whispers, from the cruelty. So she has been alone for 20 years. She has servants, teachers, everything she needs, except the sky," Daniel said, "except people who choose to see her." The king looked at Daniel for a long moment. The hall was completely silent now. Even the wings had stopped beating. "Why?" the king finally asked. "You could have ships, wealth, power. Why would you want to meet a broken princess that even her own people have forgotten?" Daniel thought about the eye he had seen through the crack. Just a glimpse. But in that glimpse, he had seen something familiar. Loneliness, curiosity, a hunger for something beyond silver walls. "Because I have spent 3 years on this planet," Daniel said, "and I am also stuck on the ground. I thought it might be nice to meet someone who understands." King Aldros stared at him. The counselors whispered furiously. The crowd did not know what to think. Then the king did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a short laugh, rough and surprised, like he had forgotten how. Very well, human. You may meet my daughter. But I warn you, she is not kind to visitors. The last tutor who entered her wing did not come out for 3 days, and when he did, he could not stop crying. Daniel smiled. I have survived worse than crying tutors, your majesty. We shall see, said the king. And for the first time in 20 years, he gave the order to open the silver door. The ground level smelled like copper and cooking oil and something that might have been hope. Daniel walked through the lower markets of the city, his feet splashing through puddles that had never seen sunlight. Above him, the floating platforms blocked the sky. The flying Alderans never came down here. This was the world of those who had been forgotten, and there were many of them. Daniel had not known about the groundwalkers until he started asking questions. The servants in the palace whispered about them. The outcasts, the fallen, those born without wings, or those who had lost them to accident or age. Alderan society had no place for them, so they had made their own place. Down here, in the shadows, an old woman with scarred stumps where her wings had been sold fruit from a cart. A young man with twisted feathers that would never carry him walked past with a load of metal scraps. Children ran through the narrow streets, laughing and playing games that did not require flight. They looked at Daniel with curiosity. A human walking among them was strange, but he was not unwelcome. He was a groundwalker too. After all, Daniel found what he was looking for in a small workshop tucked between 2 crumbling buildings. An old craftsman sat surrounded by papers and strange instruments. His wings were gray with age and hung limply at his sides. You are the human, the craftsman said, the one who stopped the plague. I am, and you want something from me. I want you to make something. A gift for someone who has never seen the ground level. The craftsman listened as Daniel explained. When he finished, the old Alderan smiled. It will take 3 days. I can wait. While he waited, Daniel explored. He walked every street of the lower city. He talked to the people who live there. He learned their stories. They had built something remarkable down here. A whole society that the flying ones knew nothing about. Artists painted murals on the undersides of bridges. Musicians created songs that used the echoes of the stone walls. Inventors built machines that worked without flight. There was beauty everywhere. If he knew where to look, that on the 3rd day, Daniel collected his gift. He did not try to visit Lyra. She had asked him to stay away, and he would respect that. But he sent the gift to her with a simple note. You do not need to see me again. But I wanted you to have this. The gift was a map. Not an ordinary map, but a detailed guide to the ground level of the city. Every hidden garden was marked. Every piece of art that could only be seen from below. Every fountain, every shop, every secret wonder that the flying ones had never noticed. It was a map of a world she did not know existed. Lyra opened the package alone in her garden. She unfolded the map and stared at it for a long time. Then she made a decision. For the first time in 20 years, she left the Wing of Sorrows. She covered her small wings with a cloak and walked out through the servants' entrance. No one stopped her. No one even noticed. The guards watched the sky, not the ground. The lower city was nothing like she had imagined. She had thought it would be ugly, dark, and sad, a place of punishment and shame. Instead, she found wonder. She followed Daniel's map to a garden hidden under a floating platform. Flowers grew there in colors she had never seen, fed by the moisture that dripped from above. An old woman tending the flowers smiled at her and offered her tea. She found a marketplace where ground walkers sold things they had made. A young girl showed her a mechanical bird that could actually fly, powered by tiny gears and springs. The girl had never flown herself, but she had built something that could. She found art everywhere. Carvings in the stone, paintings on walls, songs drifting from windows. The ground walkers had created their own culture, their own beauty, their own worth, and they did not seem sad at all that sunset. Lyra followed the map to a small fountain in a quiet square. The fountain was positioned perfectly to catch the light that filtered down between the floating platforms. It turned the water into gold and silver and red. Daniel was there, sitting on the fountain's edge, feeding small birds that had no fear of creatures who could not fly. He did not look at her. He did not demand anything. He just sat there, like he was simply enjoying the evening. Lyra sat down beside him. "How did you know I would come?" she asked. "I did not. I come here every evening. The birds are good company." They sat in silence for a while. The water sparkled. The birds pecked at the seeds Daniel threw. "I was wrong about you," Lyra finally said. "You were careful. There's nothing wrong with being careful. 20 years of being hidden taught me that everyone wants something." "I do want something," Daniel said. He looked at her for the first time. "I want to be your friend. Real and true. Not because you are a princess. Not because it gives me power. Just because you're the most interesting person I have met on this planet. And I am tired of being alone." Lyra looked at the map in her hands. At the world she had never known. At the human who had shown it to her. "All right," she said. "Friends." Daniel smiled. "Friends." Above them, the flying ones soared through the sky, never looking down. They did not know what they were missing, but Lyra was starting to understand. 3 counselors had suggested execution, 2 had recommended exile, and 1 had simply asked if humans were edible. High Counselor Varek stood before the gathered nobles, his golden wings spread wide in outrage. The council chamber floated 100 meters above the ground, and every seat was filled with the most powerful Alderans in the kingdom. "The human has been visiting the princess for 3 weeks, Varek announced. "Every day, sometimes for hours. He refuses all other rewards. He asks for nothing except time with our king's cursed daughter." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. What could he possibly want? Varek continued. "Think about it. He saves our people from plague, and instead of taking his rightful reward, he focuses on the one member of the royal family who is weak, who is vulnerable, who is hidden from the public." Lord Kalen, an old warrior with scars across his wings, spoke up. "You think he means to use her against the crown? What else could explain it? Humans are clever creatures. They smile and help and wait for the right moment to strike. This one is playing a long game. Or perhaps," said Lady Mira, a younger noble with silver feathers, "he simply enjoys her company." Varek laughed. "Enjoys the company of a princess who cannot fly? Who has not left her tower in 20 years? Who is, by every measure of our society, worthless?" "Careful, counselor," Lady Mira said coldly. "She is still the king's daughter. A daughter he hid away because even he knows what she is." The argument continued for another hour. By the end, the council had decided to demand that the human take his reward and leave. They would triple the offer. No one could refuse that much gold. In '01 except Daniel Reed. But he stood before the council the next day, looking small and strange among the hovering nobles. The king sat on his floating throne, watching with an expression Daniel could not read. "We offer you wealth beyond measure," Varek announced. 3 times what was originally promised. Ships, lands, titles, servants. Everything a human could dream of. "All you must do is leave our princess alone and return to your own people." Daniel looked at the counselors, then at the king, then back at Varek. "No," he said. The council erupted. Wings beat furiously. Voices rose in anger and confusion. "No." Varek shouted over the noise. "You reject 3 times the reward. Eat dough. Then what do you want? Name it. Whatever your true purpose is, reveal it now." Daniel took a deep breath. "I want permission to visit Princess Lyra whenever she allows it. That is all. That is my reward." The chamber went silent. Even the king leaned forward on his throne. "You want to visit her?" "Yes." "Why?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Because she beat me at chess yesterday, and I want a rematch." Lord Kalen laughed, a rough bark of surprise. Lady Mira hid a smile behind her wing. But Varek was not amused. "This is a trick," he insisted. "Some human scheme we do not understand." "Then let me explain," Daniel said. "On my world, we have something we call friendship. It means choosing to spend time with someone because you enjoy their company. Not for power, not for gold. Just because being with them makes your life better. And you have formed this friendship with the cursed princess. She is not cursed. She is brilliant, funny, and lonely. I'm also fairly clever, occasionally funny, and very lonely. It seems like a fair match." King Aldros finally spoke. You would trade a fortune for friendship? Your Majesty, I have been alone on this planet for 3 years. I have lived among your people, helped them, healed them. But I have never had a friend. Not really. Lyra understands me in ways no one else does. She knows what it is like to be stuck while everyone else moves freely. That understanding is worth more than all the gold in your vaults. The king descended from his throne and landed before Daniel. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. I have not visited my daughter in 5 years, the king said quietly. I told myself it was to protect her. But the truth is, I did not know what to say to her, how to face what I had done by hiding her away. It is not too late, Daniel said. Is it not? On Earth, we believe that it is never too late to start again. Even broken things can be mended. Even old wounds can heal. The king turned to his council. The human's request is granted. He may visit the princess whenever she allows it. This matter is closed. Varek sputtered in protest, but the king silenced him with a look. That night, a servant came to Lyra's garden with news of what had happened in the council. She listened without expression. When the servant left, she sat alone among her glowing flowers. The human had chosen her. Not for power, not for tricks, just for her. She wanted to believe it. But 20 years of loneliness had taught her to be careful with hope. She wrote a message and sent it to Daniel's quarters. The message was simple. Do not come again. I will not be anyone's path to power, not even yours. Then she waited in the dark and tried not to cry. The garden had never seen rain, but something had watered the flowers all these years, and Daniel suspected it was not the servants. He stepped through the silver door and stopped. He had expected a prison, dark walls, border floors, the sad cage of a forgotten princess. Instead, he found a paradise. The Wing of Sorrows was a garden that stretched further than he could see. Bioluminescent flowers glowed in soft blues and purples, creating their own starlight. Trees with silver bark reached toward a painted ceiling that showed the sky the princess could never touch. Streams ran through stone channels, and small creatures with too many legs scattered at his footsteps. That it was beautiful. It was also clearly the work of someone who refused to be defeated. You are the human. The voice came from above. Daniel looked up and saw her sitting in a tree, a book in her hands. Princess Lyra looked down at him with eyes that held no warmth. She was Alderaan, but different. Her feathers were a deep purple, almost black, and they covered arms that ended in wings far too small. They looked like the wings of a baby bird, crumpled and weak. She would never fly with those wings. She would never even glide. I am, Daniel said. My name is Daniel Reed. I know who you are. She closed her book and climbed down the tree with surprising skill, using her small wings for balance. The hero, the plague stopper, the human who walks. That is a lot of titles. My father loves titles. He probably offered you a dozen. He did. Lyra reached the ground and stood before him. She was shorter than most Alderaans, but she held herself like someone who had learned to fill space without taking to the air. Let me guess, she said. You asked to see the monster in the tower, the broken thing the king hides from his people. You wanted to look at the cursed princess and feel good about yourself. That is not why I came. Then why? Her voice was sharp. Are you collecting sad stories? Do humans enjoy the suffering of others? Or did you think I would be grateful that someone finally noticed me? Daniel looked at her. He saw the anger, but he also saw what was beneath it. The same loneliness he had seen through the crack in the door. I came because I saw you watching me, he said simply. And I wanted to say hello. Lyra stared at him. Hello, hello. For a moment, she did not know what to do. Then she laughed. It was a bitter laugh, but real. You rejected gold and power to say hello to me. I have been on this planet for 3 years, Daniel said. In all that time, I have never met anyone else who is stuck on the ground. Everyone else flies over me, around me. They are kind enough, but they do not understand what it is like to walk while everyone else soars. I thought you might. Lyra was quiet for a long time. The glowing flowers shifted colors slowly around them. You are either very strange or very stupid, she finally said. I've been told I am both. Something changed in her face. The anger did not disappear, but it made room for curiosity. What is it like? She asked. Being human. Being a species that was never meant to fly. We manage, Daniel said. We built machines that carry us through the sky. We climbed mountains because they were there. We walked on our moon because you had no choice. Because we wanted to. Flight is wonderful, but walking has its own rewards. You see things that the flying ones miss. You notice the small details, the flowers at your feet, the insects in the grass. The world is different from the ground. Not worse, just different. Lyra sat down on a stone bench, and Daniel sat beside her. He noticed the books stacked around the garden. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. You read a lot, he said. There is nothing else to do. I have read every book in 12 languages. I have learned mathematics and science and history. I have built machines and written poetry and mapped the stars. That sounds like more than nothing. It sounds like a prison with comfortable chains. Daniel looked at one of the machines she had mentioned. It was sitting near a flower bed, a complex thing of gears and crystals. What does that do? It measures the vibrations of the ground. I'm trying to understand earthquakes. The flying ones do not care about earthquakes. They simply go higher. But down here, the ground matters. On Earth, we have scientists who do the same thing. They are considered very important. Lyra looked at him with surprise. Important, of course. Understanding the ground saves lives. You cannot fly away from every problem. They talked for 6 hours. Daniel did not notice time passing. Neither did Lyra. They talked about science and books and what it meant to be different. They argued about poetry. They laughed at each other's bad jokes. They found that loneliness shared becomes something else. When the guards finally came looking for Daniel, Lyra realized something strange. For the first time in 20 years, she had forgotten to be angry. Will you come back? She asked, and then looked annoyed at herself for asking. Daniel smiled. If you will have me, I suppose I could tolerate your presence. You are not as boring as the tutors. High praise. Do not let it go to your head, human. But as he walked away, Daniel saw her smile. Just for a moment. Just a small thing that IT was enough. Prince Soren had flown over his sister's garden 1,000 times and never once looked down. Today, he walked through the silver door for the first time since he was a child. The garden was more beautiful than he remembered, more alive, and at the center of it, sitting at a small table covered with mechanical parts, was his sister. She looked different. He could not say how. She was still small, still wingless, still everything their society considered broken. But something had changed. Brother, Lyra said without looking up. Father sent you. He did. He wants to understand what has happened to you. What has happened to me? You leave your garden now. You walk the lower city. You speak to commoners. The servants say you laugh. Soren sat across from her. You never laughed before. Lyra set down the gear she was working on. I never had a reason to laugh before. The human. His name is Daniel. Soren looked at the machine on the table. It was complex and strange, all spinning parts and delicate crystals. He had no idea what it did. What did he do to you? Soren asked. He showed me something, Lyra said. He showed me that being on the ground is not a punishment. There's an entire world down there, brother. A world you have never seen because you never thought to look. I did not understand. I know. I did not understand either. For 20 years, I thought I was cursed. Broken. Wrong. I thought the ground was my prison. She picked up the gear again and fitted it into her machine. Daniel taught me that the ground is just a different sky. Soren stayed for an hour. By the end, he still did not understand. But he had seen his sister smile, and that was more than he had seen in 20 years. The summons came 3 days later. Daniel was called before the full court once more. This time, the chamber was packed. Word had spread about the human and the princess. The nobles wanted to see what would happen next. High Counselor Varek stood at the center, his wings spread in triumph. Human, he announced, the council has made a decision. Your continued presence is disruptive. Your influence over the princess is concerning. We are prepared to offer you a final reward. 10 times the original offer. Enough wealth to live as a king on any world in the galaxy. The crowd murmured in approval. No one could refuse such an offer. All you must do, Varek continued, is leave this planet and never return. Daniel stood alone on the floor of the chamber. 1,000 winged figures looked down at him from above. The king watched from his throne, his expression unreadable. "No," Daniel said. The murmurs turned to gasps. "No." Varric laughed. "You cannot be serious. This is more wealth than your entire species has ever possessed. I understand that. Then why refuse?" Daniel looked up at the hovering nobles, at the wealth and power surrounding him, at everything he could have with a single word. "Because I was offered power and gold," he said, "and I chose Lyra instead." The chamber erupted. Varric shouted for order. The nobles argued and accused. Someone called for Daniel's arrest. Someone else defended him. Through it all, Daniel stood calmly in the center of the storm. King Aldros raised his hand, and silence fell. "You would truly give up everything," the king said slowly. "For my daughter?" "Not for your daughter," Daniel said. "With your daughter, there is a difference." "Explain." "I am not saving her, your majesty. She does not need saving. She is brilliant and strong and has survived 20 years of isolation with her spirit intact. What I'm doing is choosing her, choosing to walk beside her instead of flying above her, choosing to see the world from the ground instead of demanding she somehow reach the sky." He paused. "On my world," he continued, "we do not fix people. We walk with them. We do not demand that they become something they are not. We accept them as they are and find beauty in the differences." The silence stretched. Then, slowly, a sound came from the back of the chamber. The silver door opened. Lyra walked through it. Her small wings were visible, her identity clear. The nobles stared in shock. Many had never seen her. Some had thought she was dead. She walked across the floor to stand beside Daniel. Her steps were steady. Her head was high. "I am Princess Lyra," she announced, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "Daughter of King Aldros. I have spent 20 years hidden because our society believes I am worthless. This human has shown me otherwise." She looked at her father. "I will no longer hide. I will no longer be ashamed. And I will no longer allow anyone to drive away the only true friend I have ever had." The king stared at his daughter, at the human beside her, at the courage it had taken for both of them to stand there, surrounded by those who could fly and refuse to feel small. Then King Aldros did something no one expected. He descended from his throne, landed on the floor, and stood with them. "My daughter is not broken," he said to his court. "She is not cursed. She is a princess of this realm, and she will be treated as such. The human stays. This discussion is over." Varric opened his mouth to protest, but the king silenced him with a look that promised consequences. The silver door would never close again. The silver door had been made into a bench, and every morning someone left flowers on it. 1 year had passed since Daniel Reed refused a fortune for friendship. The world had changed in ways no one expected. The Wing of Sorrows had a new name now. The Ground Garden. Its walls had been opened, its paths made public. Anyone could visit, and many did. The once hidden paradise had become a place of wonder for flying and walking Alderans alike. Princess Lyra stood at the center of it, speaking to a group of young ground walkers who had come from the lower city. She was teaching them about the machines she had invented. One of them was the earthquake sensor she had built years ago. Others were new creations that had changed how people thought about life without flight. Daniel watched from a nearby bench, smiling. In the past year, Lyra had become something new. Not healed, not fixed, something better. She had become a voice for those who could not fly, an ambassador between the sky and the ground. The ground walkers had lived in the shadows for centuries. Now, for the first time, they had someone in the palace who spoke for them, someone who understood their lives, because she had lived it too. Changes came slowly at first, then faster. The lower city received funding for repairs and lighting. Schools opened for ground walker children. Jobs that did not require flight were created and valued. The old craftsman who had made Daniel's map was brought to the palace as a royal advisor. Not everyone was happy. High Counselor Varric still watched Daniel with suspicion. Some nobles complained that the natural order was being destroyed, but they were fewer each day. King Aldros visited the ground level one morning. It was the first time he had ever set foot there. Daniel and Lyra guided him through the streets. They showed him the hidden gardens, the art, the markets, the people. They showed him a world that had existed beneath his kingdom for centuries while he looked only at the sky. The king wept. "I never knew," he said. "All these years, I thought the ground was nothing but shame and punishment. I did not know there was beauty here." "Most people do not look down," Lyra said. "They are too busy looking up." "How did you learn to see it?" She looked at Daniel. "Someone showed me." That evening, Varek came to Daniel's quarters. The counselor's wings were folded tight against his back, and his expression was difficult to read. "I have watched you for a year," Varek said. "I have looked for your true purpose, your hidden scheme, the trap you must be building." "And?" Daniel asked. "I have found nothing." Varek sounded almost angry about it. "You help people. You make no demands. You take no wealth. You simply walk beside the princess and make her happy. That is all I have ever wanted." "But why? What do you gain?" Daniel thought about the question. He had been asked it many times in the past year. By nobles, by servants, by the ground walkers, by the king himself. His answer was always the same, but he tried once more. "On my world," he said, "we have a saying. We do not fix people. We walk beside them. I came to this planet by accident. I stopped a plague because I knew how. But Lyra is different. She is my friend. The first real friend I have had since I left Earth. Friendship." Varek said the word like it was foreign. "That is truly all." "Counselor, your people measure worth by the size of wings. Humans do not have wings at all. We learned long ago that worth comes from something else. From kindness. From courage. From choosing to stand with someone even when it costs you." Varek was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once and left without another word. That it was not acceptance. But it was a start. The invention was revealed 3 months later. Lyra had been working on it in secret, using everything she had learned from the ground walker craftsmen and her own 20 years of study. It was a small platform with crystals and gears and a power source. Daniel did not fully understand that a personal flight device that IT did not require wings. Anyone could use it. Ground walkers, humans, anyone. The first test was private. Just Daniel and Lyra in the ground garden at sunset. "I did not build this to cure myself," Lyra explained. "I am not broken. I never was. I built it because everyone deserves to see the sky." She handed Daniel the controls. "Will you fly with me?" Daniel looked at the device. At Lyra. At the painted ceiling that had been her only sky for so long. "I thought you said the ground had its own beauty," he said. "It does. But that does not mean we cannot visit the sky sometimes." She smiled. The same smile he had seen in the fountain square a year ago. The smile that had told him everything would be all right. Daniel took her hand. They rose together. The ground garden fell away beneath them. They passed through the open doors of the palace and into the true sky. The wind caught them, and the stars began to appear above. Below, the city spread out in all its glory. The floating platforms, the spires, the lights of the lower city that had once been hidden in shadow. Daniel could see it all, from above and below at once. "This is beautiful," he said. "It is," Lyra agreed. "But you know what is more beautiful?" "What?" "The fact that we can go back down whenever we want." Daniel laughed. Lyra laughed with him. The broken princess and the walking human, flying together through a sky they had both earned. Worth had nothing to do with wings. It never had. Some lessons just took a while to learn.